The McDonald's South on Main Street in Willow Creek, Ohio, was a Saturday afternoon circus. The golden arches glowed against a gray March sky, a beacon for every kid, trucker, and soccer mom within a 10-mile radius. Inside, the air was a greasy haze of frying oil and salt, thick enough to cling to your skin. Pop tunes crackled through ancient speakers, some top 40 hit Maggie Harper couldn't name drowned out by the chatter of families, the clatter of trays, and the occasional shriek from the play place in the corner. The floor was a sticky mosaic of spilled Coke and mashed fries, the kind of mess that made you glad you wore sneakers instead of anything fancy. Maggie sat at a booth near the window, her elbows propped on a red plastic table speckled with salt grains and ketchup smears. She was 32, with dark brown hair pulled into a messy bun and a face that carried the soft lines of a woman who'd laughed plenty but worried more. Her faded denim jacket hung over the seat back, and her sneakers' scuffed white Nikes tapped a restless rhythm against the linoleum. Across from her, Sophie Harper, 7 years old and all elbows and knees, hunched over a tray of fries like it was her last meal on earth. Her blonde ponytail bounced with every bite, the ends brushing the glittery unicorn on her purple t-shirt. Those hazel eyes, big as saucers, and twice as bright, darted up to Maggie with a grin. "Best fries ever, Mom," Sophie declared, her voice cutting through the din. She held up a golden fry like a trophy, ketchup dripping onto the tray. "You're still my superhero, though. Even better than fries." Maggie chuckled, her heart doing that little flip it always did when Sophie said stuff like that. "High praise, kiddo. Guess I'll take it." She reached over, snagging a fry from Sophie's stash and popping it in her mouth. It was hot, salty, perfect, the kind of comfort she craved after a week of juggling her part-time gig at the grocery store and dodging her mom's nagging calls. Super mom's gotta keep her strength up, right? Sophie nodded solemnly, like they were plotting a mission. "Right. You're the strongest, Mom. Like, stronger than Spider-Man and Wonder Woman put together." "Big talk," Maggie teased, leaning back with a smirk. She glanced out the window at the parking lot minivans and pickups jockeying for spots, a couple of teens vaping by a beat-up Honda. It was a typical Willow Creek Saturday, the kind where nothing much happened unless you counted Mrs. Jenkins yelling at the mailman again. But today felt off. She couldn't pin it down, just an itch at the back of her neck, like someone was watching. Her phone buzzed on the table, shattering the moment. The screen lit up with Mom, and Maggie groaned. Carol Harper, bless her heart, had a knack for calling at the worst times. She swiped to answer, bracing herself. "Hey, Ma. What's up?" "Maggie, I saw you at that park earlier." Carol's voice crackled through, sharp and accusing. "You shouldn't be dragging Sophie all over town like that. She is too old to be running around like some toddler. She needs structure, not fries and chaos." Maggie rolled her eyes, keeping her voice low so Sophie wouldn't catch the edge. "She is 7, Ma, not 70. We're fine. It's just McDonald's, not a war zone." She glanced at Sophie, who was now stacking fries into a wobbly tower, oblivious to the lecture. "Fine? You call that fine?" "She is fragile, Maggie. You're too soft on her, always have been." Carol's tone was a familiar mix of worry and judgment, the kind that had been grinding Maggie's gears since she was a kid herself. "Soft, huh?" says the woman who sent me to school with tuna sandwiches every day for a year. Maggie pinched the bridge of her nose, feeling the old irritation bubble up. "Look, we're good. I'll call you later, okay?" She hung up before Carol could fire back, tossing the phone down with a huff. Sophie looked up, her fry tower teetering. "Was that Grandma?" "Yeah, just checking in." Maggie forced a smile, brushing off the tension. "She thinks I'm turning you into a wild child." Sophie giggled, knocking her fries over. I like being wild with you, Mom. Can I get a Coke? Pretty please? Sure thing, wild child. Maggie slid out of the booth, grabbing their empty tray. Be right back. Don't go building any more skyscrapers without me. As she headed to the counter, weaving past a hairy dad juggling 3 Happy Meals and a gaggle of teens snapping selfies, Maggie didn't notice the eyes on her. In the corner booth, Ray Donovan sat hunched over a coffee, his scarred cheek twitching like a tick. At 45, he looked like a man who'd seen too many bar fights and won most of them broad shoulders, straining a leather jacket, hands rough as sandpaper curled around his cup. His dark eyes tracked Sophie like a hawk sizing up a rabbit, unblinking and cold. Across the room, Vanessa Steele leaned against the counter, her red nails tapping a slow beat on a plastic tray. She was 27, all curves and confidence in a tight black top and jeans, her lipstick a slash of crimson that matched her sly smile. She ordered a milkshake she had no intention of drinking, her voice low as she murmured into her phone, "It's set. Signal us live." Maggie reached the counter, where Tina Morales, assistant manager with a perpetual frown, was wiping down the soda machine. Tina's dark hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, her McDonald's polo wrinkled like she'd slept in it. "Hey Tina, can I get a small Coke for Soph?" Maggie asked, glancing back at her daughter. "Sure thing, Mags," Tina mumbled, her hand shaky as she grabbed a cup. Her eyes darted toward Ray, then away, like she'd seen a ghost. Maggie frowned. "You okay? You look like you're about to bolt." Tina forced a laugh, too high-pitched. "Just a long shift. You know how it is, weekends are nuts." She filled the Coke, ice clinking loud against the plastic. Maggie nodded, but that itch was back, stronger now. She took the drink and turned, catching Ray's stare for a split second before he looked down at his coffee. Vanessa slipped her phone into her pocket, her smirk widening as she sauntered toward the exit. Something was off. Maggie could feel it in her bones, a mother's gut screaming louder than the noise around her. Back at the booth, Sophie was doodling on a napkin with a crayon she'd fished from her pocket, a stick figure, mom and daughter holding hands. "Look, Mom! It's us!" she chirped, pushing the napkin across. "Love it, Soph," Maggie said, sliding the Coke over. "You're my artist in residence." She sat down, sipping her own coffee, black and bitter, just how she liked it, trying to shake the unease. "Hey, how about you hit the bathroom before we head home? Wash that ketchup off your hands." Sophie wrinkled her nose but nodded. "Okay, but only 'cause I'm a big girl now." She hopped down, her glittery sneakers squeaking as she trotted toward the restroom, dodging a kid with a melting ice cream cone. Maggie watched her go, that itch turning into a full-on prickle. She scanned the room, Ray still staring at his cup, Tina wiping the same spot on the counter like her life depended on it, the teens laughing too loud by the door. Normal, right? Just a busy McDonald's. So why did it feel like the air was tightening around her? Minutes ticked by 3, then 5. Too long. Maggie's coffee went cold in her hands. Then came the sound that stopped her heart, a sharp, panicked cry from the restroom. "Mom! My legs hurt." She was out of the booth in a flash, coffee splashing across the table, her sneakers pounding the floor as she shoved past a guy with a tray. "Sophie!" she yelled, bursting through the restroom door. Sophie stood by the sink, tears streaming down her freckled cheeks, her jeans stuck to her thighs. "Mom, it's all gooey," she sobbed, tugging at the fabric. "I sat down and it had stuck me." Maggie dropped to her knees, her hands trembling as she touched Sophie's legs. Cold, tacky glue coated her daughter's skin, seeping through the denim, turning her jeans into a second skin. "Oh, honey," she breathed, her voice cracking. "What the hell is this?" "It hurts, Mom," Sophie hiccuped, clinging to Maggie's shoulders. Like spider webs, but worse. Maggie's mind raced. Glue? In a McDonald's bathroom? She pulled Sophie close, stroking her hair, whispering, "You're okay, baby. Supermom is here." But her eyes darted around the tiny room. Grimy tiles, a dripping faucet, a toilet stall with the door ajar. The seat glistened with the same sticky mess, a puddle of it smeared like someone had done this on purpose. "Stay right here, Soph," she said, propping Sophie against the sink. She stormed out, dragging her daughter by the hand, her sneakers squeaking with every furious step. "Tina!" she barked, marching to the counter. "Get over here now." Tina flinched, dropping her rag. "Maggie, what?" "Look at this." Maggie lifted Sophie's leg, showing the glue-stained jeans. "Someone put this crap in the bathroom. My kid is a mess. This ain't no prank." The room quieted, heads turning. Tina's face went pale, her eyes flicking toward Ray, then back. I don't know, Mags. Probably some dumb kids. I'll check the cameras, but they've been glitchy all day." "Glitchy?" Maggie snapped, her voice rising. "My daughter is crying her eyes out, and you're giving me glitchy? Fix this, Tina." Behind the counter, Jake Riley, a lanky 17-year-old with acne and a McDonald's visor, froze mid-order, his ears perking up. He'd heard Vanessa's hushed call minutes ago. Tracker's live. "We're good." He glanced at Maggie, then at Ray, who was now draining his coffee like nothing was wrong. Jake Eska twisted something was up, but he wasn't about to play hero. Not yet. Maggie turned back to Sophie, kneeling again. "You're tougher than this, Soph," she said, wiping tears with her sleeve. "We'll get you cleaned up, okay? Supermom's on the case." Sophie sniffled, managing a shaky nod. "I tried to be brave, Mom. Like you. You were a kiddo. Bravest girl I know." Maggie hugged her tight, the glue sticking to her own hands now, a cold reminder of something she couldn't name. She looked up, catching Ray's stare again, dark, steady, like a predator sizing up prey. Vanessa was gone, her milkshake untouched on the counter. Maggie scooped Sophie up, ignoring the stares, and headed for the door. "We're out of here," she muttered, her heart hammering. Whatever this was, it wasn't random. She could feel it. Someone had targeted her girl, and Supermom wasn't about to let it slide. The sun hung low over Maple Grove Park that Saturday morning, casting long shadows across the playground in Willow Creek, Ohio. It was March 2025, and spring was just starting to flex its muscles, buds popping on the oak trees, a breeze rustling through last year's leaves, the air crisp with the scent of damp earth and fresh-cut grass. The park buzzed with weekend life, kids shrieking on the slides, a little league team practicing in the distance, their bats clanging against chain-link fences, and a mom somewhere yelling, "Tommy, don't eat the dirt." It was the kind of chaos Maggie Harper lived for, messy, loud, and full of Sophie. Maggie sat on a weathered wooden bench, its green paint chipped and curling like old skin. Her denim jacket was slung over her arm, too warm now in the midday sun, and her white Nikes tapped a steady beat against the gravel path. She was 32, with the kind of tired beauty that came from late nights and early mornings, dark circles under her eyes, a smattering of freckles across her nose, and brown hair spilling out of a loose ponytail. In front of her, Sophie Harper, 7 years old, and a bundle of restless energy, clung to the merry-go-round like a tiny astronaut. Her purple hoodie flapped as she spun, her blonde ponytail whipping the air, and her glittery sneakers, already scuffed from a week of school, dangled just above the wood chips. "Mom, push me higher," Sophie hollered, her voice bright and sharp over the playground din. Her hazel eyes sparkled with that wild, fearless joy only kids could muster, the kind that made Maggie's chest ache with love. "Hold on tight, kiddo," Maggie called back, hopping up from the bench. She jogged over, her sneakers crunching gravel, and gave the merry-go-round a solid shove. The rusty metal groaned, spitting faster, and Sophie's giggles erupted like fireworks, high-pitched and unstoppable. "Faster, Mom! Make me fly!" Sophie squealed, gripping the bars with both hands, her ponytail a blonde blur. Maggie grinned, pushing again, her palms stinging from the cold steel. "Up you go, my little fighter. Super Mom-S got the power today." The merry-go-round whirled, kicking up a faint dust cloud, and Sophie's laughter bounced off the trees, mingling with the chatter of sparrows overhead. It was their thing, these Saturday outings away from Maggie's dead-end job at the grocery store and Carol's endless phone lectures. Just the two of them, a team against the world. After a few more spins, Maggie slowed the ride, her breath puffing out in little clouds. "Okay, Princess Sophie, time for a break before you blast off to the moon." Sophie slid off, her sneakers hitting the ground with a soft thud. She stumbled a little, dizzy and giggling, then ran to Maggie, wrapping her skinny arms around her mom's waist. "You're the best hero, Mom. Like, stronger than Spider-Man and Wonder Woman put together." Maggie knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from Sophie's sweaty forehead. "Big talk from my sidekick. Guess we make a pretty tough duo, huh?" She tapped Sophie's nose, earning another grin. "The toughest?" Sophie nodded, her ponytail bobbing. She plopped onto the bench beside Maggie, digging into her hoodie pocket for a crumpled juice box. The straw was bent, but she jabbed it in anyway, sucking down apple juice with a loud slurp. "Can we tell the story again? The one with Super Mommy?" Maggie leaned back, stretching her legs out, the sun warming her face. "All right, one more time. So there's this brave Princess Sophie who lives in a big old castle, right?" "Right," Sophie chimed in, kicking her feet against the bench. "And the Shadow Man tries to get her." "Yep, sneaky Shadow Man with his creepy cloak," Maggie continued, lowering her voice for effect. "But Super Mommy swoops and bam! With her super strength and her trusty, broom of justice. She fights him off, and Princess Sophie helps by yelling so loud the whole kingdom hears." Sophie clapped her hands, juice box forgotten. "And we win. 'Cause Super Mommy always wins." "Always," Maggie agreed, pulling Sophie into a side hug. "No Shadow Man-S catching you with me around." As Sophie snuggled closer, Maggie's eyes drifted across the park, taking in the familiar chaos. A couple of boys were tossing a frisbee near the sandbox, their shouts cutting through the air. A dad wrestled a stroller over the uneven path, muttering about mud. Normal stuff, Willow Creek stuff. But then her gaze snagged on something or someone near the picnic tables by the oak trees. He was a big guy, maybe 45, built like a linebacker gone to seed. Ray Donovan stood there, hands shoved in the pockets of a worn leather jacket, his boots scuffing the dirt like he owned the place. A jagged scar ran across his left cheek, pink and puckered against his weathered skin, and his dark eyes were locked somewhere in the distance. Maggie followed his stare, and her stomach did a slow flip. He was watching Sophie unblinking, steady, like a dog eyeing a bone. She shifted on the bench, pulling Sophie a little closer. "Hey, Soph, you thirsty? Want another juice?" she asked, keeping her tone light. "Nah, I'm good," Sophie said, still slurping. "Can I do the slide now?" "Sure, go for it," Maggie replied, her eyes flicking back to Ray. He hadn't moved, just stood there, a hulking shadow against the trees. Probably some creep hanging out, she told herself. Willow Creek had its share of oddballs, old Mr. Grayson, who yelled at squirrels, that guy with the rusty van who never smiled. But this felt different, heavier. Sophie bolted for the slide, her sneakers kicking up with chips as she climbed the ladder. Maggie kept one eye on her, the other on Ray. Then she noticed someone else, a woman, younger, maybe late 20s, standing by the swings. Vanessa Steele was all polish and poise, her tight jeans hugging her legs, a black top showing just enough to turn heads. Her red lipstick popped against her pale skin, and she held a phone to her ear, snapping pics of the playground with casual flicks of her wrist. The faint whiff of her perfume, something floral and sharp, drifted over on the breeze. Maggie's brow furrowed. Was she taking pictures of Sophie? No, couldn't he be just some Instagram wannabe, probably. She shook her head, muttering, "Get a grip, Mags. You're seeing ghosts." "We!" Sophia's shout snapped her back. The girl rocketed down the slide, arms flung wide, landing in a heap at the bottom with a laugh. "Did you see, Mom? I'm fast. Fastest in Ohio, kiddo," Maggie called, clapping. She stood, brushing dust off her jeans, and waved Sophie over. "See, Mir, let us take a breather." Sophie trotted back, plopping onto the bench with a dramatic sigh. "Sliding is hard work. Can we get nuggets soon? Please?" Maggie chuckled, ruffling her hair. "You're a bottomless pit, you know that? How about McDonald's? Fries, nuggets, the works." "Yes." Sophie pumped her fist, bouncing in her seat. "You're the best, Mom." "Anything for my girl," Maggie said, slinging an arm around her. "Let us roll before you starve." As they gathered their stuff, Sophie's juice box, Maggie's jacket, she stole another glance at Ray. He was still there, now sipping from a water bottle, his eyes flicking toward them again. Vanessa had moved closer, her phone tucked away, her heels sinking into the soft grass as she adjusted her hair. Maggie's gut twisted, that itch from earlier flaring into something sharper. She couldn't place it. Maybe it was nothing, just a mom's overactive radar, but it stuck with her like a splinter. "See, Mon soft," she said, taking her daughter's hand. "Time to fuel up." They headed for the parking lot, Sophie skipping beside her, chattering about nuggets and ketchup. Maggie's old Toyota Corolla sat near the entrance, its faded blue paint chipped from too many Ohio winters. She buckled Sophie into the back seat, her hands lingering on the straps, double-checking like always. "Ready for McDonald's?" she asked, climbing into the driver's seat. "Super ready," Sophie chirped, kicking her feet against the seat. Maggie started the engine, the radio crackling to life with some country song she didn't know. She pulled out, glancing in the rearview mirror. Sophie was singing to herself, off-key and happy, her ponytail swaying. But in the corner of her eye, Maggie caught Ray moving slow, deliberate toward a black SUV parked under the trees. Vanessa was already there, sliding into the passenger seat, her red lips curling into a smile Maggie couldn't read. She gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles widening. "Just some weirdos," she muttered under her breath. "Nothing to it." But as she drove toward Main Street, the golden arches looming ahead, that splinter dug deeper. Something was coming, she could feel it, a shadow creeping closer than she'd ever imagined. Super Mom and Princess Sophie were about to face a fight they didn't see coming, and Maggie's gut told her it'd take more than a broom of justice to win. The night settled over 1412 Elm Street like a heavy blanket, thick and quiet, the kind of stillness that made every creak sound louder than it should. It was Tuesday, a few days after the McDonald's mess, and Willow Creek, Ohio, had slipped into its usual suburban slumber. Outside Maggie Harper's modest two-story home, the streetlight flickered, casting a weak orange glow across the patchy lawn. Crickets chirped in the bushes, a steady hum broken only by the occasional rumble of a car rolling down the cul-de-sac. Inside, the house smelled faintly of apple pie. Maggie's attempt at a comforting weekend treat mixed with the stale tang of yesterday's coffee. Maggie stood in the kitchen, her sneakers silent on the worn linoleum, the back door cracked open as she hauled a trash bag out to the curb. She was 32, but tonight she felt older, shoulders slumped, dark circles under her eyes deeper than usual. Her denim jacket hung on a hook by the fridge, and her messy bun sagged, strands of brown hair tickling her neck. The glue incident at McDonald's still gnawed her, a splinter she couldn't pull out. She de-scrubbed Sophie's jeans twice, but the memory of her daughter's tears stuck harder than the mess itself. "Just some punk kids," she muttered, tying the bag shut. "Gotta be." The kitchen was a cozy clutter, dishes piled in the sink, a half-empty coffee mug on the counter, Sophie's latest masterpiece, a crayon drawing of Supermom and Princess Sophie pinned to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a buckeye. The TV murmured from the living room, some late-night rerun of Friends Maggie had left on for noise. Upstairs, Sophie Harper, 7 years old and braver than she knew, slept in her small bedroom. Her purple quilt was tangled around her legs, glow in the dark stars dotting the ceiling above her bed, casting a faint green shimmer. Her stuffed bunny, Mr. Flops, lay sprawled by her pillow, one ear flopped over its button eye. Her blonde ponytail fanned across the sheets, and her glittery sneakers sat by the door, scuffed from park adventures. Maggie stepped onto the back porch, the warped wooden boards groaning under her weight. The trash bin stood at the edge of the yard, a dented black can that rattled as she shoved the bag in. A cool breeze brushed her face, carrying the earthy scent of spring mud and the faint buzz of a neighbor's TV through an open window. She lingered a moment, staring at the dark line of trees beyond the fence, her breath puffing out in little clouds. That itch, the one from McDonald's, was back, sharper now, like a warning she couldn't hear yet. Inside, the house was still too still. Then it came, a scream, high and piercing, slicing through the night like a knife. "Mom! He's here, help!" Maggie's heart stopped, then slammed into overdrive. She dropped the trash lid with a clang and bolted back inside, her sneakers pounding the linoleum. "Sophie!" she yelled, her voice raw as she tore through the kitchen, knocking the coffee mug to the floor. It shattered, dark liquid splattering like blood across the tiles. She hit the stairs 2 at a time, her hand gripping the wobbly banister so hard it creaked. The hallway upstairs was a blur of faded floral wallpaper, a nightlight glowing dimly by the bathroom, but all she saw was Sophie's door, half open, the green starlight spilling out. "Another cry, Mommy?" And Maggie burst in, her breath ragged. Ray Donovan loomed in the room, like a nightmare made flesh. At 45, he was a wall of muscle and menace, his leather jacket creaking as he moved, a jagged scar slashing his cheek like a warning sign. His boots heavy, mud-caked thudded on the hardwood, leaving faint smears. He had Sophie in his grip, one needy hand clamped over her mouth, the other pinning her arms as she kicked and thrashed. Her purple hoodie rode up, her jeans twisting around her legs, and her hazel eyes were wide with terror, tears streaking her freckled face. "Get off my daughter, you son of a bitch!" Maggie roared, her voice a guttural snarl she didn't recognize. She lunged, grabbing the first thing she saw, a wooden broom propped by the closet from last week's sweeping. She swung it hard, the handle cracking against Ray's knees with a dull thud. Ray grunted, his grip loosening for a split second. "Shut her up, or I will," he growled, his voice a low rumble, thick with menace. His breath reeked of tobacco and sweat, hot against the air, as he wrestled with Sophie. Sophie didn't shut up. She twisted at his arms, her teeth sinking into the fleshy part of his hand. "Take that, jerk!" she shrieked, biting down hard enough to draw a hiss from Ray. Blood flecked her lips, and he yanked his hand back, cursing under his breath. "Little brat!" Ray snarled, shaking his hand, red dripping onto the floor. But Sophie was free, tumbling toward Maggie with a sob. Maggie caught her, pulling Sophie behind her, the broom still clutched in one trembling hand. "You're done, asshole!" she shouted, swinging again. The broom caught Ray's shin this time, a glancing blow, but enough to make him stumble toward the open window he'd climbed through. The screen lay torn on the floor, a jagged hole letting in the night air. "Mom," he asked bad. Sophie whimpered, clinging to Maggie's leg, her voice shaking but fierce. "I bit him hard like you do." "You did good, Soph," Maggie panted, her eyes locked on Ray. "Real good?" Ray straightened, his scarred face twisting into a scowl. "This ain't over," he spat, wiping blood on his jacket. He moved fast for a big guy, lunging toward the window, his boots scraping the sill. Maggie didn't let up. She dropped the broom and grabbed Sophie's desk lamp, a cheap plastic thing with a wobbly base, ripping the cord from the wall. "Get out!" she screamed, hurling it at Ray's back. It hit with a crack, bouncing off his shoulder as he ducked through the window, landing in the backyard with a heavy thud. Outside, a car horn blared sharp, impatient. Maggie rushed to the window, Sophie still glued to her side, and saw Vanessa Steele in the driveway. Her black SUV idled under the flickering streetlight, engine growling, and her red nails flashed as she leaned on the horn again. "Ray, now!" she yelled, her voice cutting through the night, all traces of her earlier charm gone. Her lipstick gleamed in the dim light, a slash of crimson against her pale, furious face. Ray scrambled to his feet, cursing as he limped toward the car. "We're blown, move it," Vanessa snapped, slamming her door shut. The SUV peeled out, tires squealing on wet asphalt, disappearing around the corner as porch lights flicked on up and down Elm Street. Maggie sank to her knees, pulling Sophie into her arms, both of them shaking like leaves in a storm. "You're safe, baby," she whispered, her voice cracking as she rocked her daughter. "Super Mama's got you." Sophie buried her face in Maggie's chest, her tears soaking through the faded t-shirt. "I see couldn't he let him take me, Mom," she hiccuped. "I fought 'cause you're my hero." "You're my hero, Soph," Maggie said, kissing her forehead, tasting salt and sweat. "Bravest girl in the world." Her hands ran over Sophie's arms, checking for bruises, her heart hammering so loud she could barely hear the crickets outside. The room was a wrecked quilt on the floor, Mr. Flops upside down, the lamp shattered by the desk, but they were alive. Maggie's gaze darted to the window, the torn screen flapping in the breeze, a cold reminder of how close she'd come to losing everything. "Who the hell was that?" she muttered, her mind spinning. The glue at McDonald's, it was random. This was planned, targeted, and it chilled her to the bone. "Mom?" Sophie's voice was small, muffled against her. "He has gone, right?" "Yeah, honey," Maggie lied, forcing a steady tone. "He has gone." But she knew better. That scarred face, that woman's voice, they weren't done. Not by a long shot. She stood, lifting Sophie with her, the girl's legs dangling as she carried her downstairs. The living room felt too big, too exposed, with its wide windows and flimsy curtains. Maggie grabbed her phone from the coffee table, the friend's laugh track still chattering in the background, and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. "Yeah, hi, this is Maggie Harper at 1412 Elm Street," she said when the operator picked up. "Some bastard just broke in and tried to take my kid. Get someone here now." As she waited, pacing the living room with Sophie in her arms, the neighbor's lights multiplied, yellow squares popping up like eyes in the dark. Mr. Jenkins across the street poked his head out, yelling, "Everything okay, Maggie?" She waved him off, too wired to explain. Sophie lifted her head, her eyes red but steady. "We beat him, Mom." Like Super Mommy and Princess Sophie. Maggie managed a shaky smile, hugging her tighter. "Damn right we did, kiddo." Team Harper tough as nails. But her eyes stayed on the window, the night pressing in, and she knew this was just the beginning. Whoever they were, they'd be back and Super Mom would be ready. The Willow Creek police station smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. A stale mix that hit Maggie Harper the second she stepped through the double doors. It was Wednesday morning, March 2025, just hours after Ray Donovan's break-in at 1412 Elm Street, and the place buzzed with a low-grade chaos, phones ringing, a printer wheezing in the corner, a janitor mopping a spill by the front desk. The walls were a dull gray, plastered with wanted posters, and a corkboard scribbled with case notes, the kind of clutter that screamed small-town overwork. Overhead, fluorescent lights buzzed like angry bees, casting a harsh glow on the scuffed linoleum floor. Maggie sat in a hard plastic chair by Officer Mike Callahan's desk, her arms wrapped around Sophie, who nestled against her chest. She was 32, but the night had aged her dark circles carved deeper under her eyes, her brown hair a tangled mess spilling from its bun, her faded t-shirt still damp with Sophia's tears. Her white Nikes tapped a restless beat, one sneaker streaked with mud from the backyard chase. Sophie, 7 years old and tougher than she looked, clutched Mr. Flops, her stuffed bunny, her blonde ponytail limp against Maggie's shoulder. Her purple hoodie was wrinkled, her jeans swapped for pajama pants after the glue-stained pair from McDonald's got tossed in the wash. Her hazel eyes, red-rimmed but steady, darted around the room, taking in the chaos. Mike Callahan leaned back in his chair, a burly guy in his 40s, with a buzz cut and a coffee mug stained from years of use. His desk was a landfill crumpled donut bags, a stack of files, a photo of his own kid taped to the monitor, but his voice was calm, steady, the kind Maggie needed right now. "All right, Maggie, let us go over it again," he said, pen poised over a notepad. "You're sure this guy had a scar left cheek, you said?" "Dead sure," Maggie replied, her voice hoarse but firm. "Big, pink, nasty looking. He was huge, 6 foot something, leather jacket, boots like he'd stomped through every mud pit in Ohio. Broke in through Sophia's window, tried to drag her out." She tightened her grip on Sophie, feeling her daughter's small frame tremble slightly. Mike nodded, scribbling fast. "And you whacked him with a broom?" "Damn right I did," Maggie said, a flicker of pride cutting through her exhaustion. "Hit his knees, then his shin. Sophie bit him, gave him something to remember us by." Sophie lifted her head, her voice small but proud. "I bit him hard, Officer Mike. Right here." She pointed to her own hand, mimicking the chomp. "He yelled real loud?" Mike cracked a grin, leaning forward. "Good for you, kid. Sounds like you and your mom make one hell of a team." He glanced at Maggie, his eyes softening. "You did good, Mags. Most folks would be frozen." "Yeah, well, most folks don't have my kid to protect," Maggie shot back, brushing Sophia's hair back. "He is still out there, Mike. That woman too, she was in a black SUV, honking like a lunatic. They're not done with us." Mike's grin faded, replaced by a grim nod. "We'll get him. Got officers dusting your place now, prints, fibers, the works. Anything else you remember?" Maggie hesitated, her mind flashing back to McDonald's. "That glue thing at McDonald's Saturday. Sophie got it on her legs in the bathroom. I thought it was some dumb prank, but now she trailed off, her gut twisting. It's connected, isn't it?" Mike's pen paused, his brow furrowing. "Glue? You didn't mention that before." "Didn't think it mattered till now," Maggie admitted, shifting Sophie in her lap. "Tina Morales, she's the assistant manager there, said the cameras were busted. But it was weird, Mike. Too weird." He leaned back, tapping his pen against the desk. "All right, we'll pull Sophia's jeans from evidence, see what is up. Might be a lead." He scribbled another note, then looked up as a young officer barely out of the academy dropped a file on his desk. "Lab's got something, Callahan," the kid said, breathless. From the Harper House window frame had a partial print. "Running it now." Good, Mike grunted, waving him off. He turned back to Maggie. Hang tight, Mags. We're on this. Maggie nodded, but her eyes drifted to the window, where dawn was breaking over Willow Creek, pink streaks cutting through the gray. Hang tight? Easy for him to say. She hadn't slept, hadn't stopped hearing Sophia's scream in her head. See Mon soft, she murmured, standing with her daughter in her arms. Let us get you home. Back at 1412 Elm Street, the house felt different, violated, like a stranger had left their stink behind. The kitchen was still a mess, shattered mug on the floor, coffee pooling by the fridge, but Maggie didn't care. She boarded up Sophia's window with a piece of plywood from the garage, the nails crooked from her shaky hands. New deadbolts gleamed on the front and back doors, a rush job from the hardware store that morning, and a cheap security camera blinked red above the porch, its wire dangling like an afterthought. The living room TV flickered with cartoons, now SpongeBob giggling about jellyfish trying to drown out the silence. Maggie sat on the faded blue couch, Sophie curled beside her, Mr. Flops tucked under her arm. The apple pie sat untouched on the coffee table, its crust sagging, a sad reminder of the weekend that felt a lifetime ago. Maggie's phone buzzed Carol again, but she ignored it, her thumb rubbing circles on Sophia's back. Mom? Sophia's voice was soft, her eyes on the TV but not really watching. He is not coming back, right? Maggie swallowed hard, forcing a smile. Not a chance, kiddo. Super Mom and Princess Sophie scared him off for good. Plus, Officer Mike S. got the whole town looking for him. Sophie nodded, but her fingers tightened around Mr. Flops. What if he does? I don't want to be scared. Maggie pulled her closer, kissing her forehead. Listen up, sophomore. If anyone shady comes near, you yell like it's the 4th of July loud enough to wake the whole street. Run to Mr. Jenkins if you have to. We're tougher than they think, right? Right, Sophie said, sitting up straighter. I'll scream so loud, they'll hear me in Cleveland. She practiced a high, piercing help. That made Maggie wince and laugh. That's my girl, Maggie said, ruffling her hair. Team Harper tough as nails. But the days dragged on, 10 of them, each one a tightrope walk between fear and fight. Maggie barely slept, her eyes glued to the camera feed on her phone, jumping at every shadow. She got a text on day 3, from a block number, "You're next." Her blood ran cold, but she didn't tell Sophie, just drilled her harder on the scream and run plan. Sophie drew more pictures, Super Mom versus Scar Guy, pinning them to the fridge like battle trophies. Willow Creek buzzed with rumors, neighbors whispering about that Harper break-in, Mr. Jenkins rigging his porch with floodlights, but no arrests yet. Then, on day 6, Mike called. Got something, Mags, he said, his voice crackling through the line. That glue on Sophia's jeans? Lab found a micro tracker in it, high-tech, pro-grade stuff. Ties to some trafficking cases out of Cleveland. Maggie's stomach dropped, her hand gripping the phone. Trafficking? You mean? Kids, Mike cut in, grim. Organ ring, we think. That glue was random, someone marked her. Oh my God, Maggie breathed, glancing at Sophie, who was coloring at the kitchen table. Who? That scarred guy? We're digging, Mike said. Got a tip, 2 kid at McDonald's, Jake Riley, emailed us a recording. Some woman saying, meet at warehouse 17. Sound familiar? Maggie's mind flashed to Vanessa, the red nails, the smirk. Yeah, she said, her voice hardening. Yeah, it does. Hang tight, Mike repeated, the phrase she'd come to hate. We're closing in. The breakthrough came on day 10. Maggie was microwaving mac and cheese when the phone rang again, Mike, breathless. We got him, Mags. Rated warehouse 17, old storage spot off Route 9. Caught the guy mid-plan, packing a van with gear. Scar on his cheek, just like you said. Ray? Maggie asked, her pulse racing. Ray Donovan, yeah. Big bastard fought like a cornered dog, but we took him down. His partner Vanessa Steele got nabbed at a truck stop an hour ago, trying to skip town. She has spilling everything, whole damn ring coming apart. Maggie sank into a chair, relief flooding her like warm water. They're done? For real? Locked up tight, Mike said. Life sentences, minimum. You and Sophie did this. Mags, your fight gave us the push. She looked at Sophie, who grinned over her mac and cheese, oblivious. Team Harper, she muttered, a shaky laugh escaping. Thanks, Mike. Don't thank me, he said. You're the hero here. That night, Maggie slept fitful, but real for the first time in days. Sophie curled beside her on the couch. The next morning, a new call came, not Mike, but a woman with a chipper voice. Mrs. Harper? This is Lisa from Bright Futures Community Center. Saw your story on Channel 5. Willow Creek mom fights off kidnapper. We'd love you to teach our kids, show him how to stand tall like you and Sophie. Maggie blinked, the word sinking in. Teach? Me? You're a natural, Lisa said. Your grit has something special. What do you say? Maggie glanced at Sophie, who was doodling Team Harper on a napkin. Yeah, she said, a smile tugging at her lips. I say yes. She hung up, pulling Sophie into a hug. Guess what, kiddo? Supermom got a new mission. Sophie beamed, her crayon pausing. With me. Always, Maggie said, kissing her forehead. Team Harper just getting started. The shadow was gone for now, and Maggie felt something new stirring. Not just survival, but strength, a spark she'd pass on. Supermom and Princess Sophie had won this round, and Willow Creek would never forget it. The Bright Futures Community Center sat on the edge of Willow Creek, Ohio, a squat brick building painted a cheery yellow that glowed under the late spring sun. It was June 2025, 3 months since Ray Donovan and Vanessa Steele had been locked away, and the air buzzed with the hum of summer kids laughing, cicadas chirping, the faint whir of a lawnmower down the street. Inside, the center smelled like a mix of apple juice, glue sticks, and fresh paint, a scent that clung to the bright murals splashed across the walls. Rainbows, smiling suns, stick figure families holding hands. The lobby had a bulletin board pinned with flyers: Summer Art Camp, Yoga for Tots, and a glittery sign that read, Welcome, Ms. Harper, in bold, looping letters. Maggie Harper stood in the classroom, her white Nikes squeaking on the polished wood floor, a name tag pinned crookedly to her denim shirt, Maggie H., teacher. She was 32, but the months had softened her edges, her dark circles fading, her brown hair tied back in a neater ponytail, a spark in her eyes that hadn't been there before. The room was alive with chatter. A dozen kids sprawled across small chairs in a circle, their sneakers dangling and their voices overlapping. Crayons rolled across tables, paper crinkled, and a juice box tipped over, leaving a sticky puddle that Maggie didn't rush to clean. She'd learned to roll with messes since Elm Street. Some things mattered more. Sophie Harper, 7 years old and growing into her courage, sat at a tiny desk near the front, her purple backpack slung over the chair. Her blonde ponytail bounced as she bent over a drawing, her tongue poking out in concentration. Her glittery sneakers, new ones, a gift from Maggie after the old pair got too beat up, tapped a happy rhythm against the floor. Her hazel eyes flicked up to Maggie every few seconds, a grin tugging at her lips, like she couldn't believe they were here together. On the wall behind her, framed in a dollar store frame, hung her latest masterpiece, Mom and Me versus the Bad Guys, a crayon sketch of Supermom Maggie with a broom and Princess Sophie biting a shadowy figure, triumphant under a big yellow sun. Maggie clapped her hands, the sound sharp but warm. All right, you little warriors, listen up, she called, her voice carrying over the giggles and chair scraping. Today is all about being brave. Who has got a story for me? Hand shot up. A forest of wiggling fingers. A boy with a buzz cut and a Spider-Man shirt waved wildly. Me, Miss Harper. I climbed the big slide at the park. Didn't he even cry? Nice one, Ethan, Maggie said, nodding. That slide's a beast. Anyone else? A girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile piped up. I told my brother to stop taking my candy. He bigger, but I yelled real loud. Maggie grinned, leaning against her desk, a scratched-up thing piled with markers and lesson plans. That's what I'm talking about, Lily. Bravery is not about size, it's about heart. She glanced at Sophie, winking. Right, Soph? Sophie sat up straighter, her crayon pausing. Right, Mom. Like when we fought the bad guy at our house. I bit him, and you hit him with the broom? The room erupted gasps. Who's? A few no way. Ethan's jaw dropped. You fought a real bad guy? Like a robber? Yep, Maggie said, crossing her arms with a smirk. Me and my sidekick here took him down. Team Harper tough as nails. Sophie hopped out of her chair, holding up her drawing like a trophy. See? This is us. Mom's Super Mom, and I'm Princess Sophie. We beat him together. She pointed to the shadowy figure, now sporting a red scribble where she'd bitten him. He was super mean, but we were stronger. Lily leaned forward, eyes wide. Did you really bite him, Sophie? Hard, Sophie said, baring her teeth for effect. He yelled and dropped me, and Mom whacked him bam. Right in the legs. The kids cheered, clapping like it was a superhero movie. Maggie laughed, a real belly laugh that shook off the last of her lingering shadows. That's right, sophomore. We showed him nobody messes with us. It'd been a long road to this moment. After Ray and Vanessa's arrest 10 days post-break-in, Willow Creek had buzzed with the Story Channel 5 running headlines like Local Mom Fights Off Kidnapper and Willow Creek Girl Bites Back. The police raid on Warehouse 17 had nabbed Ray mid-plan, his scarred face snarling as they cuffed him. A van packed with chilling gear, duct tape, zip ties, said it as proof of the trafficking ring's horrors. Vanessa got caught at a truck stop off I-71, her red nails tapping a nervous beat as she tried to charm her way out. She cracked an interrogation, spilling names and locations, and the whole operation crumbled. Dozens arrested, kids saved, a nightmare ended. Ray and Vanessa got life sentences, no parole, locked away in separate Ohio prisons where their shadows couldn't reach. Maggie had watched the sentencing on TV, Sophie asleep beside her, and felt the weight lift justice, hard-won and real. The tracker in Sophie's jeans tied back to McDonald's, a microchip so small it slipped past her that day, planted by Vanessa's glue trick. It was over, but the echoes lingered. Sophie's flinch at loud noises, Maggie's habit of triple-checking locks. Now, standing in this sunny classroom, Maggie felt something new: pride, purpose, a chance to turn their fight into light. Bright futures had called a week after the arrests. Lisa's voice chipper over the line. Your grit as something special, Maggie. Teach our kids that strength. She said yes, and here she was, Super Mom in a new cape. Miss Harper? Ethan raised his hand again, snapping her back. Did you get scared? Fighting the bad guy? Maggie paused, leaning down to his level. You bet I did, Ethan. Scared out of my mind. But here as the thing, fear as just a shadow. You got heart, it don't stand a chance. Sophie taught me that. Sophie beamed, hopping back to her seat. We're a team, Mom. The strongest ever. Damn right, Maggie said, catching herself too late. The kids giggled at the slip, and she shrugged. Oops, don't tell your parents I said that. The lesson rolled on stories of bravery, drawings of supercells, juice boxes slurped dry. Sophie stayed close, her chair scooting nearer to Maggie's desk, her drawing pinned up for all to see. She wasn't the shy kid from March anymore, no more hiding behind Maggie's legs, no more nightmares about Scar Guy. She'd chatter now, loud and proud, about how Mom and me beat M. Her glittery sneakers didn't scuff from fear but from running, playing, living. As the clock ticked toward noon, parents trickled in jeans and ball caps, tired smiles, and quick hugs. Maggie wrapped up, her voice warm. "All right, warriors, that's it for today. Keep that bravery in your pocket, use it when you need it." Ethan tugged her sleeve as he left. "Did you really fight bad guys, Miss Harper?" "Sure did," she said, ruffling his hair. "With my sidekick right here." Sophie grinned, slinging her backpack on. "We're superheroes, Ethan. Nobody messes with Team Harper." The room emptied, leaving Maggie and Sophie alone, sunlight streaming through the big windows, dust motes dancing in the beams. Maggie sank into a chair, pulling Sophie onto her lap. "You killed it today, kiddo. Proud of you." Sophie snuggled close, Mr. Flop squished between them. "You too, Mom. You're the best teacher ever." Maggie kissed her forehead, tasting the faint salt of sweat and crayons. "Only 'cause I've got the best partner." "Team Harper, huh?" "Forever," Sophie said, her voice sleepy but sure. She held up her drawing, the colors bold against the white paper. "This is us always winning." Maggie took it, tracing the lines with her finger. Super Mom's broom, Princess Sophie's fierce bite, the sun shining over them. "Always," she echoed, her throat tight. She'd fought for this for Sophie, for herself, and they'd come out stronger. Later, as they walked home down Elm Street, the town felt different, lighter. The golden arches of McDonald's loomed in the distance, a reminder of where it started, but it didn't scare her anymore. Neighbors waved Mr. Jenkins from his porch, Mrs. Carter with her yappy dog, and Sophie waved back, her steps bouncing. The new deadbolt still gleamed on their door, the camera still blinked, but Maggie didn't check it as often. Ray and Vanessa were gone, their shadows locked away, and Willow Creek had rallied around its own. Back at 1412, Maggie baked cookies, chocolate chip, Sophie's favorite, the kitchen filling with a sweet, warm smell that chased out the last of the cold. Sophie sat at the table, coloring a new adventure. Team Harper saves the day. The TV stayed off, replaced by their laughter, their voices weaving a story no nightmare could touch. "Mom?" Sophie said, looking up from her crayons. "We're okay now, right?" Maggie slid a cookie onto her plate, sitting beside her. "Better than okay, sophomore. We're unstoppable." Sophie grinned, biting into the cookie, crumbs tumbling. "Unstoppable," she mumbled, her mouth full. "Team Harper forever." Maggie leaned back, watching her daughter, her fighter, her light. "Forever," she said, and meant it. Super Mom and Princess Sophie had faced the dark and won, not just for themselves, but for every kid in that classroom, every shadow they'd helped chase away. Willow Creek would remember, and so would they, a legacy of love, courage, and a bond no one could break.